Hello, everybody. Welcome in to After the Game with Todd Leary. Jim Coyle, host with the Indiana Sports Beat, of course. And tonight, Indiana traveled to Piscataway, New Jersey to take on the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, trying to break a 6-game losing streak as they head into the heart of the Big Ten season and trying to salvage what has been a not very good season for the Hoosiers as they try to maintain the hopes of making the NCAA tournament. That does not look very good right now as they fall in Piscataway. Todd Leary joins me now, of course, after the game with Todd Leary. And thanks a lot for everybody for joining us. Feel free to text us, 812-269-6367. You can text us. Of course, you can respond on Facebook as well. But thanks a lot for joining us and welcome. We're here at Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Thanks a lot for joining with us tonight after the game, Todd. Great start for Indiana finally. Gave us some hope. But unfortunately, that faded kind of quickly.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I was pretty excited. I know we were talking about it during the game, and I was excited at the offense and how it looked like they had a purpose and they knew what they were trying to do, and they were trying to be aggressive, and they weren't holding the ball till the last 5 seconds on the shot clock, and it looked like everybody was kind of clicking and having fun. And then I just don't really know what happened. The last 4 minutes of the first half, they failed to score and obviously let Rutgers back in it. And when you let a team get some confidence, it's tough to take that back away from them. And when you don't score for 9.5 minutes, Indiana was lucky to even have a chance towards the end of the game. So it became the same frustrations that we talked about after last week's game.
Yeah, you talk about confidence. Confidence is something that this team has been obviously playing without for quite some time. And now this 6-game losing streak is a 7-game losing streak, and it doesn't look good to end anytime soon because Saturday they travel to East Lansing.
One of the toughest places in the league to play for sure.
And one of the toughest teams in the league this year. And it's not. This team is in some serious trouble.
Yeah, I mean, if the standard that we're setting for it is to turn it around right now, yeah, it's a big hill to climb right now and go to East Lansing and win that game against the team that, like I said, it's a tough place to play. And like you said, that team is tough to play against. And they're a veteran group. They play hard. They're very well coached, and that's a pretty tough combination to have to go into their place and try to beat them. You just take away, all the issues that Indiana has right now and the lack of confidence. I don't know how that's one you got to go into hoping to try to stay close. I mean, that's a toughie.
This team has left a lot of people scratching their heads. And coming into this season, there are a lot of expectations. Was this team overhyped? Was the talent on this team overhyped? Is that part of why these expectations were so high?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if overhyped is the right way. The way that players are evaluated nowadays, I don't think they were overhyped. I don't necessarily know that, there's very few teams that even have the opportunity to put, a bunch of 5 stars on the floor together in one recruiting class together. Michigan and Kentucky and Duke and those teams seem to do it about every year, but there's not very many teams that do that. This Indiana team has a bunch of guys who are pretty highly recruited, and I would just say they're not gelling right now the way that a lot of fans, obviously, and I think a lot of coaches expect them to. It's a thing that you don't know about at any team. Kentucky doesn't even know it every year. Duke doesn't know it every year when they bring these guys in of how well they're going to play together. And, Indiana has some guys that were highly recruited. They were highly sought after by a bunch of different schools, and they've not meshed very well together, and that's one of the hardest things, I think, to overcome. I mean, you can get better at shooting, you can get better at a lot of different things. I don't know how you get better at gelling together with each other.
And that's a key part. But those guys are not gelling together. It seems that there's something amiss. You've been in a lot of locker rooms, a lot of different teams, high-caliber teams. This team is missing something serious as far as chemistry and cohesiveness. They don't look like a team that enjoys playing with each other.
Yeah, no, they don't, for sure. And they don't – that's just getting worse as this hole gets deeper and deeper that they're digging. and it's the hardest thing to overcome. I mean, you can overcome a lot of skill issues. You can even overcome some effort issues. But when things are going south and no one gets along, I don't even know that from an inside perspective. I'm not saying no one gets along. I'm just saying that it doesn't appear from our perspective in watching them. I mean, they don't. I talked about it the other night after the game. I always kind of monitor teams and players by their positive touches. And positive touches means how they interact with the other players, the coaches, the officials, whomever, from that perspective. And this team has very few positive touches when it comes to that. And that's a tough thing to overcome. That is not something that you just go out. You almost have to change your personality in order to get better at that. And when you're faking being a leader, it shows, and everybody kind of sees it. And there's not a leader that's stepped up on this team that I think you can look at and say, if they just follow that guy. Yeah, Juwan Morgan puts up good numbers. He plays hard. You could say you want him to be like that part of it, but they're just not a team that's gelled together, and they don't have anyone to look up to realize, okay, this is how we need to play, this is how we need to act. We always had a Calbert Cheney when I was there, so it was real easy from our perspective.
Yeah, and that team was so different because you had everybody on that team was just a competitor, and that's something I'm not seeing on this team either. And I'm not saying that there's no competitors on that team, but they don't seem like that they're competing, that they're almost just, I don't want to say going through the motions, but they are not doing that extra whatever to get the job done at whatever, whether it's playing defense or running the offense or whatever the case is. I don't see this extra effort being exhibited.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough thing because, when you lose a game, it seems like everybody says, oh, they weren't ready to play, or you get off to a 17-0 deficit, and the guys are like, fans like me will say, oh, they weren't ready to play, and that's not a thing. You don't do anything different for that game that you did for a game where you came out and got off to a great start. It's just concentrating on the little things and the fundamentals and getting off to a good start, because if you get off to a good start, which they did tonight, and I was really kind of surprised that it went away. At least it went away at the end of the first half, because if it goes away at halftime, then you can maybe blame it on the fact of they went in and got cold and came back out, and maybe you have to give Rutgers credit for taking the momentum away. But that's not what happened in this game. I mean, Indiana all of a sudden lost its aggressiveness offensively a little bit. Their confidence, if it went away that fast, then they're too soft from that perspective, because – you can't, as an offensive player, you can't lose your confidence and your momentum just because of a few missed shots. And then when they turn the ball over 4 consecutive times to end the first half and don't score for 4 minutes to end the first half, I mean, if they'd have been playing a Michigan or a Michigan State or a team like that and you put those numbers up, you're going to be down by 25. And they were just fortunate that they even had a chance to come back in this one.
And it's been Indiana, I've said it before, Indiana's now playing 5 against 8 or 9, whatever the rotation for another team is, and that continues to show itself. Tonight, bench points. I remember early in this game, I looked at you and I said, Indiana's got 2 bench points right now. They ended the game with 2 bench points. Clifton Moore had 2 points on the night, and he's the only guy that didn't start that scored. They are
that's pretty
getting
incredible.
Nothing from the bench, and I don't want to point guys out, but it is what it is. Demezy Anderson plays 22 minutes and doesn't score a point.
Right, and he's supposed to be a scorer. And so that's, he wasn't recruited as a defensive stopper, and he wasn't recruited as a great rebounder. He was known as a scorer in high school, and you kind of wonder how these guys went to or were recruited doing the things that they did in high school, and then it's like they get to here, and that's why it's been my contention. I said it the other night after the game that these guys are trying to run an offense instead of trying to score. And there's a definite difference in those two things. And when you get a team that is thinking too much when they're out on the court, it shows, and it's pretty obvious. And I definitely see it with this team. I mean, they're out there. I don't think that 5 guys on the floor know what they're trying to accomplish at the same time when they're out there. And that creates the result that you end up seeing tonight.
Every team has the blueprint on how to stop Indiana now, because this is a team that was number 2 in the country, I think, at 52 or 3% field goal percentage not that long ago. Tonight they shoot 35% against a Rutgers team that is one of the worst.
Not known as
but I guess that's not fair to say, because Indiana is actually one of the worst in the Big Ten, if you want to be truthful about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pulling my phone out to look up. I didn't even know what the scoring was, but you look at Langford with 20 and Morgan with 15, and then you try to talk about what's the recipe for stopping Indiana. That's pretty easy to stop. They only scored 58, and there's 35 of it right there. So, this team, with what they show on paper and then what they continue to do game after game, they're pretty easy to game plan against, to be honest with you. And I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen more junk defenses just trying to take those two guys away, but teams haven't had to do it. So there's a reason why they don't have to play those junk defenses. And, I got on Justin Smith in the game, after the game the other night, because he was taking shots that the other teams want him to take. And they were leaving him open, and he was taking those shots. Well, tonight, at least he didn't do that. Like, you could tell that's been brought up to him, and he had done that game after game. So you at least see a little bit of positive progress there, because he's understanding what's expected out of him, and it's not to stand out there and shoot three-pointers when you're open, because they're leaving you open for a reason. So you can look at that as a positive, but then we've got to find some way to get other scorers involved. And I think Finney and Durham have to be the guys who step up and do that. If Finney can't be a guy, I don't know how early it was he hit the three-pointer tonight, his only 3 points of the game, but it was pretty early on. It was in the first 4 or 5 minutes of the game, and he doesn't score another point after that. And I compare him a lot to Yogi Ferrell and what he was like as a freshman when he came in. Everybody remembers him as a senior when he left, but when he was a freshman, he didn't average 23 points a game, and he didn't control the team the way he did as a junior and senior. And as a freshman, you kind of see the same thing out of Finney, at least I do. But then he's not having those big spurts and big games where he comes in and scores 15 points all of a sudden, because you did see that out of Yogi. And I think that's something that they need. They need somebody else to step up. I see Al Durham trying to step up a little bit, be a little bit more assertive on the offensive end. This is 2 games in a row where I've kind of felt like he's at least pushing the envelope to do that. And I think Finney's got to do the same thing. They've got to have 4 or 5 guys do that, or we're going to see that same thing every game.
And talked about Rob. Rob didn't have a very good game tonight. Rob only scored 3 points, 1 of 5 shooting, 1 of 4 behind from deep, and that's pretty much his entire line there. And I know that he's got to run the offense, and he's a freshman, he's still learning, but they all have to step up. It's too late. You got to step up now and start doing this. But then again, this season is teetering on being lost after this game. This, to me, was a must-win game for them, because they have to go to East Lansing on Saturday, and there is no way in hell the team that I just saw play or have seen play the last 7 games has any chance against a Michigan State team in East Lansing.
Yeah, no, they don't. I mean, that's the way they're playing right now. They don't have a chance. Now, I'm not saying they can't win, because they could surprise us, and they could play like we saw them play early in the year. Something's going to have to click. Something's going to have to snap. There's going to have to be a difference. We can't keep expecting to do the same thing, and all of a sudden then it's just going to work itself out. It's not going to be that way. But these guys, for the way they're playing right now, you can write the season off. Like, they don't have a chance of making the tournament unless they turn something around. Now, I'm telling you, we've seen Indiana teams do it before. It's been a while since we've seen them do it, but we've seen Indiana teams win games that you didn't think they could win, and that's the position this team's put themselves in. And so unless they completely flip everything around, this season is one of those that you try to build on, and you try to get everybody playing well together. And, Romeo's not going to be back. We're all sure of that. And you're not going to have Juwan next year. So where is this team going to be at that point? And who's going to be the leaders at that point?
And right now, this team is using a lot of the newer guys that they brought in. Most teams have upper-level guys that they can count on. They don't have that. I mean, besides Juwan Morgan, they don't have that they can lean on and learn from. And these younger guys, you talked about earlier, they need to have the older guys to show the younger guys how it is. You talked about that earlier, that Jamal Meeks did a lot of valuable things for you. He's a year older, but he told you invaluable things. they don't seem like this is getting passed down, that there's a hierarchy.
It's difficult when you get the situation of a guy like Romeo supposed to be the savior because he is a freshman. And you don't know what kind of personality he's going to have when he comes in there. And you need more out of him than just the Romeo that they had in high school where he scored a bunch of points and he could put him up in big numbers in games. He can go for 40 or 50 points easily. But then you get to this level, and it's just not that easy, and it doesn't happen that way. But what's that other aspect that he can bring? What's the other intangible that he can bring to the team? And this is not a knock on Romeo, but he doesn't appear from the outsider's perspective to be that leader guy that he's going to play hard. He's going to do, what the coaches ask. He's not going to talk back. But is he the guy that everyone can follow and can lead and can look up to, and this is how we need to do it? I was insanely spoiled. We always had Calvert. He was there my whole career. We always had someone that played harder than you. So you always were trying to aspire to that level. I'll say that forever and ever. One of the reasons why we were so good that didn't have to do with his 85,000 points that he scored or whatever was he played harder than everybody else every day. And whether that was in the summertime or whether that was in the middle of the Big Ten season, he played harder than everyone every day. And you always want to, or we always wanted to aspire to be like that. And that team, I don't know who they're following right now that can do that for them.
And I'm talking about this team having no emotion. They just seem like they're there and going through the motions and not having any. Well, it doesn't see a lot of joy. There's no joy there. Yeah. Of course, there's not a lot of joy when you lose 7 straight. Right. But they don't seem like they are enjoying playing basketball. And if you're not having fun, there's no way in hell you're going to win, because what's your drive if you're not having fun?
Yeah, I mean, these guys nowadays, there's so much social media and so many different forums talking about this and that. And, we knew there was crazy Indiana fans all the time, but we didn't know exactly what they were saying all the time. These guys could just pick up their phones and figure out what everybody's saying about them nowadays. And I'm telling you, hopefully they don't do that, because no one's ever going to look at things or know. I'm considered as an expert knowing what's going on, and I don't know what's going on inside their locker room. But I can look at it from an educated guest perspective and say, what I see out on the floor, it doesn't appear like there's the leadership that it needs to be, and it doesn't appear like there's that guy that they can follow. And like you said, it doesn't appear like they're having fun or enjoying themselves. Believe me, there's tons of times with Coach Knight you don't have fun, but we're all after the same goal, and we're all working hard, and we're seeing the results. That's where these guys are losing it right now, is they're not seeing the results. They're still working hard, they're still practicing hard, and they're not seeing the results, and that's a really difficult thing to overcome.
Feel free to hit us up on the text line if you wish. That is 812-269-6367. You can also put your comments or questions on Facebook as well. I saw that Ed Briggs mentioned that they don't seem to be screening and cutting or talking on defense. I don't see a lot of communication out there. That is a good point. I don't see a lot of communication, and there's a lot of times they seem like they're trying to catch up. They're a step behind defensively, as if they're still figuring out what their responsibilities are.
Yeah, and that's a lot of that's game planning and how you're going to defend ball screens. The game is, I'm not even going to act like it's the same. The game is so much different now than it was when I played. And we did not have, this will give you an idea of, we did not set one single ball screen in my whole 5 years of being at IU. And now in today's world, these guys are setting probably 50 or 60 ball screens a game. And we weren't allowed to do it. It was just, you're not allowed to get that close to someone. They always talk about spacing and that stuff, and you can screen away from the ball, but there's no such thing as screening the ball with a Bob Knight team. But these guys, it's just a different game. It's different times, and these guys, you're not going to see the cutting like you saw the Steve Alfords. I grew up watching who was a master at reading the defense and knowing where to cut and come off the screens. That is an art. There's an art to that. Reggie Miller was huge in the NBA for that. Well, Steve Alford was maybe one of the best of all time in college at that. He didn't overpower anyone or outspeed anyone. He read the defense and knew where to go, and he was taught that, and he learned it, and he got exceptionally good at it. Well, I grew up watching that. That's what we did, and that was Coach Knight's offense. And so that's pretty easy for Indiana fans to kind of see that. This offense is totally different. Tom Crean's offense, totally different. I mean, Sampson's offense, all those are totally different than Coach Knight's, and it's just the game today. I mean, these guys are setting ball screens, and everything has to do with you'll see three guys standing still, a ball screen, and the guy with the ball dribble off of it, and everything is created off of that. And so there's a lot more standing, and I'm not making excuses for them. Some teams look good doing it. I mean, even Virginia does the same thing, who's a team that's supposed to play well together, and these guys communicate and talk. They get three guys standing around. Watch Ty Jerome and Kyle Guy. Those guys, when they pass the ball, they walk away to where they're going to stand for the rest of the possession. And that wasn't a thing when I played. We just weren't allowed to. If you ever walked, it was to the locker room.
Indiana started out good. We talked about it earlier. They had a good start to this game, and they actually were leading at the half by a point. But things went awry, but they were already going awry. They built a lead, I think a 10-point lead, and Rutgers made a run toward the end of the half. They closed and got within a point, and then they come out of the half, and Rutgers owns that portion when they come out, and they end up going on a 27-4 run. How does Indiana continue to find themselves in positions where they're allowing teams to run off 17-0 leads or a 27-4 run? How is that possible to do that on a regular basis?
Well, I mean, I wish I had a great answer for this because I would be –
must have been a hell of a question.
Somebody would be calling me, asking me how to fix this. But, I mean, Indiana to go – this is a 40-minute game, and they went 9.5 minutes without scoring a point. It's pretty hard to do. Like that's you take guys that are all recruited this highly in high school, who they all probably were the leading scorers on their team in high school, and they don't score in 9.5 minutes like that. That's one of the longest streaks I've ever heard of. Like, that is crazy. And I, at that point, you don't want to say you're beat, but you're kind of beat. They don't score for the last 4 minutes of the first half, the first 5 minutes of the second half. So, I mean, not only are you behind at that point, you don't know what to do. Like, you get so frustrated with, then you start questioning yourself, you start questioning the coaches, you start questioning your other players, and that's, once that happens, you got bigger problems than losing to Rutgers.
This is a question that really doesn't have an answer, but Chris wants to know, Chris H. from here locally, in your opinion, what do you think is going on with this team? Because there's obviously, it's more than just bad. Something seems to be going on with this team.
Well, I mean, I do think that's something that we kind of hit on a little bit earlier, in that I'm not saying there's a problem with personalities. I'm just saying, from an outsider's perspective, watching it the same way every other fan does, they don't get along. They're not having fun. They're not out there playing. You could take the ball defensively. You let the other team have the ball, and you stand there as five individuals, and you say, we are not letting this guy score. We are not letting this team score. We're going to make them take a tough shot, and we're going to get the rebound. I feel like if you took this team and did that with them, you might have a better result than getting them right now to start thinking about, okay, how do we handle in this switch? How are we handling the ball screen? Who do we switch on? Who do we not switch on? Who's allowed to switch? Who's allowed to guard certain players? And right now I see these guys thinking a lot. I see them not entirely sure of what it is they're trying to accomplish sometimes. I did at the beginning of the game. I felt like offensively, I think they were all trying to be more aggressive. I think they were all trying to shoot a little bit earlier. We didn't have any shot clock situations in that first half, and I kind of felt better about it. Even if the score had been the same, I would have still felt better about the fact of where they were. But then they came out in the second half, and everybody just looked lost. So the answer to a question is, what's going on with this team? They don't appear like they enjoy playing together, and that's a tough one.
And there are a lot of injuries that are still there, but the injuries have nothing to do with the play on the court.
Yeah.
So there's a set.
Those injuries are just giving somebody else an opportunity to be out there,
exactly.
and that person, whoever it is not stepping up and giving them anything that you can build off of, like what we're asking for.
But they still without five guys tonight. Race Thompson, who's been back to practice.
How can you say they're without him when he's never played?
Well, yeah. He has the flu now, of all things. The guy is out for 18 years with a concussion. Now he gets the flu, and it's serious. It's not a thing. But Race was out. Duran's out. not
No,
Demisy, but
played.
Devontae Green not there, obviously. Zach McRoberts got into the game but didn't really do much.
Yeah, something was up because he didn't play his normal minutes.
He wasn't expected to play either.
Yeah.
And Jerome Hunter's still out, of course. That's 5 guys. That definitely affects the team, but that has nothing to do with the play that we're seeing. And I don't know if it's because they don't have the competition, but it doesn't seem that it's that. It's something that I have no idea what it is, but it seems something funky that's going on.
Yeah, I mean it is. I don't know. I don't know these guys well enough personally to say that it's a personality issue or a bad attitude or whatever it is. I just don't know them well enough to say that, because I think if I did know them and I did think that, I would definitely say that. But they are not enjoying being on the court, and this is something that's hard to tell them right now, but when they're 50 years old, like some of us, they'll look back on this. This is supposed to be one of the best times of your life, and right now it's looking pretty miserable for them. And so, I don't know how to overcome that for them. Like I don't know what to tell them.
And I know that all of them, they want to win. I know Archie Miller wants to win. I mean, this is going to be driving Archie Miller crazy. The next question actually is, what do you think of Archie Miller? Which that's a loaded question. There's not a lot you can say other than he's a great guy, he's a great coach, and I hope that he gets through this. But some of this it has to fall on his shoulders, and he's got a lot of things that have made it difficult for him this year. We talked about the injuries, and there could be some personalities. He's also got a lot of guys that he didn't recruit on this team, which that goes into it as well. But even with all that, some of this still has to fall at his feet.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, you get the opportunity to coach a place like Indiana or what would be considered a top 10 program. You have to take the responsibility on there with you. And he knows that coming into it. I mean, you want that. If they're not expecting you to win, that's not a place you want to go to, I would hope. But Archie, he's got a system that it's a little bit old school. I mean, it's a little bit of the older defense, slow down. It's kind of a hybrid in between what you would look at like a Virginia and a Michigan State, where you got one team that really tries to slow down every possession and play slow, and you get Michigan State that tries to run as fast as they can down the court. And Archie's kind of in the middle of all of that. But defense has been something that when guys have bought into defense, his teams have looked pretty darn good. I don't know that he's ever had an offensive team that was going to overwhelm anyone, but they also don't walk down the floor and slow it down every time either. And you saw that at the beginning of the game tonight. Like, these guys had freedom at the beginning of the game, and they were coming down. They looked kind of loose, and when they had a lead, Coach Felling used to always call it front runners. When we were leading, everybody was smiling and we were playing good, and then when we got behind, that's when you found out who the tough guys were, who the mentally tough guys were, and this team looked pretty loose when they were leading at the beginning, and then they didn't have anyone, I thought, that really just put the team on their back and carried them once they got behind, and that's somebody's got to step up and do that.
You've become very, very popular doing these because I've had a ton of people asking if Todd Leary can put the uniform back on and go back out there and shoot, because they've gotten no shooters. And that's another thing. I don't understand I don't care who recruited anybody. I don't know how you can have 15, 17, 18 guys, including the walk-ons, and nobody can shoot the damn ball. I don't understand that at this level.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I know these guys were recruited. Like I said earlier, these guys were probably all the leading, even the walk-ons were probably the leading scorer on their high school team. And then you get in these situations, and I brought it up to you earlier, and if you really watch this, you'll notice it a lot more, is you take a Zach McRoberts or a Demisy Anderson, and you take guys like that. I think Juwan Morgan maybe and Romeo Finnessy, because he's supposed to have the ball. But those three guys are kind of the only guys you could separate out of this. Every other guy, when he gets a rebound, the first thing he's looking to do is pass the ball to whoever's supposed to dribble it up the court. And in high school, when these guys got a rebound, they weren't looking for anybody to give it to. They were driving down to wherever they wanted to shoot from and probably shooting it. And, that is a confidence level. The coaches are not going to let you do that. You're at a different level. I understand that. But even one or two dribbles to start the break going down the floor, is a huge difference rather than just getting the ball and then turning and pivoting and trying to find my guard to who I give it to. If I take those one or two dribbles, we're all of a sudden down the court a little bit, pushing it, making it a little bit more difficult on the defense. And, you don't see these guys do that. I mean, they are trying to find a guard to get to about as quick as possible. Even Romeo does that. I mean, he's not the best ball handler in the world. And I think, years ago when Eric Gordon was at IU, I think when people were questioning his abilities in the NBA, I think a lot of the question marks were ball handling. And he was a better ball handler than Romeo is. And so when you look at it from that perspective, and I'm not saying Romeo's not ready for the NBA because he's going to go and he's going to get drafted and all that's going to happen, so we can just quit that conversation. But he's not a great ball handler, and it's definitely an area he will improve on, probably when he's in the NBA. But I mean, he's not going to take the ball every time and go down the court. If he does, he's going to turn it over a lot. And my whole point in all of that is the aggressiveness that these guys had when they were recruited, they don't have it anymore. And so that's you kind of offset that, and you're like, well, wait a minute, should I stop? Should I recruit maybe several 4- and 5-star guys and then maybe mix in a couple of local guys that are, love to practice every day and love to do the little stuff and handle the ball and get it to the right person? And that's somebody right now I don't think they have. And Rob Finney shouldn't do that. Rob Finney has way more skill and ability than that. But somebody else could step up and do it, and there's a lot of Indiana kids that would step into that role and love to do that.
22 points from the guys down in the post. 15 points for Juwan Morgan, 7 points for Justin Smith. That's not a lot of presence down there. They're not getting much inside. They're getting nothing outside. So if you're getting nothing inside and you don't have any shooters, it doesn't seem like a lot of options for
Well,
you.
I mean, okay, so I think I love Juwan Morgan. I love what he's been for Indiana. He's a good face for the program and all that, and I like his game. But his game would be a lot better if they had a Deron Davis or someone else that was in there that was big, that they had to defend or at least give a lot of attention to. When you're looking at Juwan Morgan as your big man representative, that's not his position. I mean, he's a 3/4, more of a 3 probably than a 4. And, you even look at tonight, what was it down at the last couple possessions when they were down 6 with a minute to go, and he catches the ball with a wide open 3 and shot fakes it and gives it back to Romeo for a fadeaway 3. That's something as a senior, you got to take that shot no matter what. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your three-point percentage is. You were open, and your teammates need to see you take that shot, whether you make it or not.
And there's a lot of guys that pass shots up on this team.
Yeah.
They have
And
opportunities. They're not looking to push it.
This is a team that needs to get some easy baskets. Let's face it. I mean, they're averaging in their losses of the last, was it 6 or 7 games now?
7 now.
In the last 7 losses, they're only averaging 59 points a game. And you want to take Virginia, who's looked at a team that slows it down, and they're averaging like 72 or 75 points or something like that right now. And Indiana's averaging 59 in those 7 losses. Who are you going to beat? Like, you're not. We talked earlier. Yeah, I mean, not any of the last 7 apparently, but you're not going to beat very many teams at this level scoring 59 points a game. And offensively, like, there's some defensive things they can clean up and that they can do better at. But a lot of that is momentum. And this is a Rutgers team tonight that if Indiana would have kept pounding them in that first half, this Rutgers team wouldn't have scored 55 tonight. And Indiana would have scored 74, and it would have been a 19, 20-point win.
And Indiana kept getting – they kept getting back within 7, within 5, but they could not get past over the hump. Rutgers come into this game a good rebounding team. But they really owned the boards.
How bad was it? How bad was it?
I'll have to go back and look at
we don't even have to look at it to know how bad it was. But offensive boards was atrocious on Indiana's end. Like
45 to 32 on total.
On total, yeah.
Rebounds. Offensive rebounds, it was 13 to 8. And I think Indiana added a bunch of offensive rebounds at the end because they only had 3.
Well, I would have told you that 13 number was closer to 20. And obviously the stats are right. I'm just saying it seemed worse. Their offensive rebounds seemed to always happen at a time when Indiana needed to get it and go down and score. And it was It's there's so many frustrating things to talk about. I mean, it is.
Well, Rutgers had 32 defensive rebounds. That's how many as Indiana had total.
Yeah. I mean, Coach Knight used to always have a rebounding statistic. I'm trying to think of what it was. It was something crazy. But you had to out-rebound the opponent. It was almost like 2-1. It was you had to have as many offensive rebounds as the other team had rebounds. Yeah, it was one of our check marks on the board that was in there. And it wasn't one we accomplished very often, but you kind of get the point. I mean, if that's your goal, this kind of thing is obviously not even in the ballpark.
We were talking about Juwan a minute ago. Gary asked, do you think that Juwan Morgan has a future in the NBA?
Oh, I'm not great on scouting NBA guys because it seems like there's a bunch of guys who get a lot more out of an NBA career than I would have ever thought they would have, and there's guys who I think will do pretty well and they don't ever end up doing much. So, I mean, there's probably a place for him. I'll tell you this. If he, size-wise, I would probably say he's pretty comparable to Dennis Rodman. If he turned into that kind of player and rebounded like that, yes. There is always a place for a rebounder. And that's coming from a 6-foot guy that can't jump and didn't get very many rebounds. But I can tell you, coaches focus on rebounders. And there's probably not a leading rebounder on a team in high school or college basketball that doesn't start and play a ton of minutes, because coaches always recognize the guys who get rebounds, and it's giving you that possession. I mean, possession of the ball is the thing that you want. I mean, you want to maximize all your offensive possessions, and guys who get rebounds, coaches always notice that. It doesn't matter what kind of coach it is, they always notice that. So if Juwan could fit his game into becoming a rebounder only, I mean, Zach McRoberts could play in the NBA if he became a crazy rebounder and bulked up and got a whole bunch of tattoos and spiked his hair up.
Jack wants to know, has Archie lost this team?
I don't know. I mean,
that's not a good sign when you actually have to think about
well,
that.
how do you? I don't know. If you say yes, then am I saying that it's a negative on Archie that he's lost them, or is that saying the team? Is it blaming the team? And I'll say this: Archie's system was able to win at Dayton, and
with a lot less talent.
I'm going to say he didn't have the star recruits that he has right now, and so if he has lost them, then I'm not necessarily sure that he started out with the right components that would fit his style of play. I am not a guy who believes, and obviously this is self-serving, but I'm not a guy who believes you want to have all 4- and 5-star recruits on your team. I think you need to have some Zach McRoberts, and that's not a knock on Zach. That's actually a compliment to him. But you need those guys that are going to work hard and play hard and be happy with their role. And I think Zach would tell you. I mean, you look at him; he doesn't ever look like he wishes he got to shoot more or anything like that. He's happy rebounding and playing defense and being that go-to guy when it comes to needing to stop and who's going to guard the tough player. And you need more of those guys, whether they're 6'7" or whether they're 5'8". It doesn't matter. You need some of those guys. If we could throw some of them in that could actually shoot, it's a bonus.
And again, how do they not have one guy on an Indiana team that can't shoot? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know what happens, because I can tell you, I watched Demezi.
Demezi Anderson used to be able to shoot
I watched him in high school.
Romeo used to be able to shoot the ball.
Yeah, that's questionable. He's never been super consistent.
Not like Demezi, but I mean,
Demezi's a guy who right now, I mean, you look at him and you would think he never averaged 15 points a game, because he just doesn't. I mean, he doesn't look like an offensive player at all. And I watched him play in high school, and I can assure you, he can knock down 17-foot jump shots all day long, or at least he could when he had the confidence that. He's trying to get minutes right now. I mean, you can see, we talked about it earlier, how many minutes he played tonight. This was probably the most amount of minutes he might have played all year long, especially in one that wasn't a blowout in Indiana's favor. And so when you get a guy like that that's fighting for minutes, he doesn't want to do anything that's overstepping his bounds, like coming in and shooting 15 times in a game. And I think he puts it up about as quick as anyone when he comes in. but he's not had a game where he got hot, and especially in this losing streak. Early in the season, he played a little bit better, shot a little bit better, but he's not confident. I think it shows, and it's not going to change until his confidence level goes up.
Yeah, there's been a lot of speculation. It's all that it is, speculation, rumors that with trying to guess what's going on with this team, that there may be problems in the locker room. I don't know that, and I haven't heard that, but there is a lot of talk, and just because it's either people trying to guess what's going on with this team, but there is something not right with it. And how, let's, for argument's sake, say that there is something going on in the locker room. How infectious in a bad, negative way can that be to a team, and how detrimental can it take them down? How far?
Well, okay, so let's take the Archie Miller question and go from there to answer this. And that you look at Archie Miller, and he can't score any points, and he can't get any assists, and he can't get any defensive stops. He's got to rely on his guys to be able to do that. And you, at some point in time, recruit guys and hope that they play above their abilities. And who on this Indiana team right now would you consider is playing above their abilities? And I think there are some games you could say Juwan does. There are some spurts you maybe could say Romeo does. Beyond that, I don't think you're ever going to say that about any of these guys. And so this Indiana team is struggling for an identity. They're struggling to see, do they get along? I don't know. Like I really, that's a terrible thing you can say about a team if it's not true. And so I would hate to say they don't get along with each other, they don't like each other, they don't like playing together. But I can tell you what doesn't stand out is they don't stand out there, and I can tell you, they love playing together. They really like it when they're on the floor together, two particular guys.
What stands out most that you can see that in? I mean, what is the telltale?
I'm telling you, I use that thing of positive touches, and it'd take me like a 2-hour explanation to show you examples of what I mean. But positive touch, an example is when a guy comes into the game and another guy's going out. Do you slap his hand and do you say, hey, I'm guarding number 10. Remember, we don't let him go left, or he's left-handed, or whatever it may be. That's a positive touch. It has nothing to do with scoring or anything else. It is a guy makes a great shot, and you're giving him high five, you're dapping him, you're doing whatever.
You know what? That's a great point, because I think back how many times this season when Indiana makes a great play, do you see a teammate coming up and just high-fiving, jumping up, or doing anything?
And you see those pictures. ESPN does a great job of showing the benches when guys will make a shot. You'll see all these guys jumping up and playing the guitar and doing all kinds of things.
Having fun.
Yeah, and they look like they've obviously rehearsed this garbage. So they're liking each other. They're spending time off the court. Those guys, that's their role, and that's what they do.
Actually, Indiana had that early in the season. You had Johnny Jaker down there doing the Google eyes when they'd hit the threes.
It's almost like somebody told him to stop, which you're probably pretty sure they didn't. But you just, they don't. That's what I don't see, and I can't stress enough. I'll say the word positive touches, or the phrase, so many times that finally people will understand what I'm talking about. And it really just has to do with a player's personality and how he interacts with his teammates and his coaches. And this team is as bad as a team as I have seen in a long, long time when it comes to that. And it's not that they're negative, like they look like they hate each other. They look like nobody pays attention. Like when I go out of the game, and you should have known who I was guarding. That's who you got. And I mean, it's just like that's your responsibility, and that's a tough thing to.
We
say
talk about
somebody.
regression. This team looks like it's regressed. The other night I said, well, maybe they've stayed the same. They actually look like they've regressed. And something else I just thought of, Juwan Morgan. Juwan Morgan is earlier in the year 35 points against Butler, some big games. Not that he's not playing okay, but he's not having any big games. He's not having a 25-point game. He should have a 25-point outburst. Somebody has got to step up and have a big game to elevate the rest of this team, and that's got to fall on his shoulders because he's the guy, but it's not happening.
Man, I'm telling you, if you look at that possession that happened at the end of the game, that speaks volumes to me. And I'm talking about the one where they threw him the ball. Romeo threw him the ball. He's wide open for a three. They can cut the lead from 6 to 3. with a minute or so to go, and he doesn't even shoot the ball. And he passes it back to Romeo and tries to set a ball screen, and Romeo shoots a fadeaway shot. Not blaming Romeo. He had to shoot it basically at that point. But not taking that shot, that speaks volumes to me about what Juwan Morgan feels about his own game, what he thinks, or maybe he doesn't think he's the guy that's supposed to take that shot. That shot, whether it goes in or doesn't go in, would have meant a lot to the other teammates and to the other players, because then they know you expect to be the guy to take that shot. And I didn't play with too many guys that wouldn't have loved to have had that wide open shot. And the fact that he didn't take it is a regression, if for your point, from what I thought he was after the Butler game. I mean, after the Butler game, you would have thought if they lose, they're going to lose with Juwan shooting 25 times a game and Romeo shooting 25 times a game. And I will tell you right now, I will live with that. If he takes that shot and misses it, I'm fine with it. He is supposed to take that shot. And the fact that he didn't, to me, creates an issue. Like, there's something about that he's not the leader that he needs to be for this team to be good.
And Indiana came out of this game, and we talked about they got off to a good start, but they were putting the ball up. Evan Fitzner put some shots up. They were taking shots a little bit quicker in the shot clock. He pointed out they were actually pushing the tempo. They were pushing the issue. They were trying to get into a flow, get into a rhythm, which was great to see. At least them trying to do that. The shots weren't falling, but they were trying to do it. And then that went away. And in the second half, it was just like chasing their tail.
Yeah.
It was like a cat chased its tail, and they couldn't even catch their own tail.
Yeah, they couldn't get the lid off the basket, and that just created the huge issue. I mean, 9.5 minutes without a single point. At this level, they're lucky to even have ever had a chance after that. But when you look at the guys, and so I've beat up on Juwan for a few minutes about that, but if you look at any of those guys, if you get an open shot and you don't take it, that's worse actually than missing it. Because
especially if you're a leader.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of my whole point with Juwan with that. But with any of them, if they work and get the ball around and get you an open shot and you don't take it, that is just as detrimental as missing the shot. It's probably actually worse, because then your teammates start to question whether they're going to give it to you or whether you're going to try, whether you're the scorer that they need you to be. And then as soon as those questions start happening, then you got problems all over the place. And there was numerous times tonight. I said it to you in the first half, when Fitzner took the two of those three-pointers. Neither one of them went in, but they were the right shot to take. And that's okay. That's positive. You're gonna miss shots.
That's what he's there for.
Yeah. You only got to make 45% of them for him to think you're great. And so that's the shot that's supposed to be taken. And when you do take it, it's fine. When you stop taking it, that's a problem. And that's when they can't count on you. That's when your teammates feel like they can't count on you. The coaches can't rely on you. And that's when your playing time goes down. And then, heck, if you start taking playing time away right now from some of these guys with all the injuries and everything, who's going to be playing?
And they had gotten away from that. Tonight was the first time that they really came out and pushed the issue in the first half. And maybe it's because they haven't doing it.
Right.
They haven't been doing it, and the shots weren't falling. But this is something that they have to continue to do as they go forward with the rest of the season. Although the season is we talked about it being a season on the brink, it's kind of past that. We're on the backside of the slope now, looking downhill. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight. We appreciate you being with us after the game with Todd Leary. We're coming to you live from Bubba's 33 in Clarksville, Indiana. And make sure if you have questions, comments, you can put them on Facebook if you're following us there, or if you're following us online, you can fire those off. Text them in to 812-269-6367. Lots of comments and questions coming in on tonight. Another question from Joe is, does this team have any shot to make the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, they do. Actually, they had enough quality wins early in the year that they do have. But, I mean, it's going to take – I'm not just being a homer in saying that. I mean, it's going to take an extraordinary effort. They're going to have to win some games that right now we would question whether they can win or not. The Michigan State game is not – if they lose that one's not one that really matters. Right. But after that, then you've got to start winning games that maybe you weren't expected to win. And maybe that's like I said it earlier, and I'm waiting to see who's going to be the next guy that does this, but who's playing above their abilities? Who's doing more than what I thought they could do? And I don't know where you go with that, because I don't know.
Especially now we're past the halfway point.
Yeah, I don't know where would you even begin? Like, I can't even think of a guy who's. I still go back to fantasy, and we're talking about a guy who put up 3 points tonight, and his job's not to score, but he only had 3 assists, I think, too. But I mean, I'm just saying we need more out of him. I expected him to be able to do that. I need somebody to do something that we aren't, that surprises us in a positive way.
And we've been saying that for 7 games in a row. And it's not coming. It's not happening. And there's no
if you have me back again on
coming.
Saturday, I'm going to be saying it probably again on Saturday too. So,
but the scary part is since we have been talking about it and it's not happening. Why should anyone think that it's going to happen now?
Because we're insane.
Why can it not happen with these guys? They're good ball players. They're not great. There's not a lot of great guys on that team, ball players, but there are some, and there's some very good. They're all good ball players, all of them.
Yep.
And they could all shoot the ball. They're not shooting the ball well enough. Demezy Anderson, like we talked about before, he used to score out like he's a crazy man.
Right.
Romeo as well. All these guys. It's all gone away. How can all of that disappear? How can defensive ability disappear? Everything seems to have just gone out the window, and I have nothing to even throw at the wall.
Okay, so I think Dan Dockich a few years ago took some heat for making a statement saying that he watches a game differently than the average fan does, and I don't think he meant a real derogatory statement by saying that. It's just kind of a Coach Knight thing, like, for all the crap we put up with, we feel like we got something out of it. And Coach Knight does, after you've watched film with him enough times, you do start to watch it a different way. And so where I'm going with all that is there was a lot of games that I played that I really felt like I played well. The coaches felt like I played well. And my mom and dad were like, well, you only scored 5 points. But I rotated at the right time every time. I got the rebounds I was supposed to get. I blocked my guy out. Defensively, I helped out when I was supposed to. I got the ball to where it needed to go, which generally was just giving it to Calvert. But I felt like I played really well, and it had nothing to do with the points column. And so, like, you take Finney as an example. If he scores those 3 points tonight, if I had watched all the other stuff and it looked like he really kind of controlled the game, he doesn't need to score a ton of points for me to feel like he played a great game. But he's not doing those other things either. And I hate to keep picking on him. I'm waiting for anybody for us to look at him and go, he had his plus minus was super high, because when he was in the game, everybody else kind of flowed well. And I don't think this team has found the 5 guys that would be the best plus minus they could possibly get, or the optimal rotation, because, nobody is doing anything, like I said, above what we expect out of them. And I don't know that you could take any of these guys and go, well, he didn't score very many points, but he really played well in all the other aspects of the game. And that's what Dockich meant when he was saying all those kinds of things. Like, he watches those other things. I watch how guys set screens or how they defend a screen away from the ball. And that's just, if I had to put up with all of the stuff Coach Knight did for us, that's something I get to reap for the rest of my life, is I watch the game and I watch it a little bit differently than probably
absolutely. I mean, not
somebody else does.
What you've learned, but you playing there and being in those positions and knowing what you're learning, what you're supposed to do when this happens, when that happens. That brings me to are these guys thinking too much?
Yeah, I said that the other night. I mean, you can almost see them thinking when they're out there on the court, and especially when it gets to the point of offensively, when they are in a position, and let's say the shot clock gets down just inside of 15, close to 10, you can kind of see them almost thinking, okay, where do we go with it here? Where do we go? Where's our oh shit factor? Like, who do we give it to and what do we do? And you can almost see them thinking too much, offensively and defensively. And, when you're thinking too much and other guys can pick you up, it helps you get out of it. Right now, they're all thinking too much, and I don't see any way for them to get out of it. I don't know. You can't just say, okay, we're not going to game plan this game. Everybody just go out and play, because that'll be
and
way
if you're
worse.
not being proactive or you're being reactive. And if you're being reactive, you're behind the 8 ball,
You're done.
because you're a step back. And that's what this team is doing. And again, I can't understand that at this juncture of the season. This looks like a team that, like in the first couple of weeks, but this team looked good in the first couple of weeks. They looked good in the first month. They beat a Marquette team that's a top 10 team right now. They beat them by 23 points. They beat a Louisville team that is a top 15 team now. That's tied for the lead in the ACC.
Right.
For God's sake. That's this team that just lost to Rutgers. That it looks like they can't beat an elementary team right now.
Yeah, I mean, I said this to you earlier, and I know it was a different time and a different era and different coaches and different players, but when I was there, we never lost to Wisconsin. We never lost to Northwestern.
It's like 38
We never lost
in a row
to Penn
Wisconsin,
State. Like, there was just teams, and it's not like Wisconsin didn't have anybody. They had Michael Finley, who played for an awesome career in the NBA and was a great college player. But there's just certain. It's like having the little brother factor. I mean, you just always knew you were going to win against them, and man, there's not a team you could say that about with Indiana right now. I mean, to go and lose to Rutgers, and if this cannot sound like I'm being derogatory towards Rutgers, that's not a team you can lose to. When you're in Indiana, that's not a team you can lose to.
No.
I mean, there's not enough talent on that side of the floor. There's not anything that they do that should be able to beat an Indiana team with the recruits that they have.
This team has lost 7 in a row now. They're teetering on being similar to the 6-25 team of Tom Crean when he first took the job and was trying to rewrite the ship here on this program. I don't think Indiana's lost this many in a row since that season. And these are not even close to the same type of teams. I don't understand how that.
I mean,
they can be so similar.
So, I mean, what are the real bad losses during that 7-game streak? The Nebraska game at home is really bad. This game is really bad.
Michigan was bad.
No, you expect to lose to Michigan.
Yeah, but you don't expect to be down 17-0.
Yeah, but what game you come out of where you're like, because if they win that Nebraska game, they haven't lost 7 in a row. And if they win this game, they hadn't lost 7 in a row. So that streak breaks up. And so what if it's 3 losses and then 1 win and then 3 more losses? Do you feel any better about it? Not really. If they had beaten Nebraska at home, we wouldn't feel a whole lot better after this game than we do right now. But the 7 in a row is sort of a function of there's 2 bad losses in that. The other 5 games you probably expect to lose. Maybe. Yeah, you can live with losing, I guess you should say. I don't know. Coach Knight probably just tried to kill me for saying I was okay with losing.
And this is not something that
I felt him yelling at me somehow. I just feel him.
You seem like you're just going back in the middle.
Yeah, all of a sudden I just thought,
there.
wait a minute, did I just say that out loud? You're not allowed to say that. You're not even allowed to think that.
There's other teams that are suffering for these types of season, this type of season right now. Notre Dame has lost 6 of 7. They're having a bad year. Ohio State has lost 5 of 6, I think. So Indiana's not alone in this. But it doesn't. Indiana fans don't care about Notre Dame or Ohio State.
Well, yeah,
they care about Indiana.
Well, you look at it right now. I think I remember myself saying this every year for the last 10 years. But there's so much. The playing field has leveled so much in college basketball that you're going to have 3 seeds in the NCAA tournament with 8 to 10 losses. Like, it's not going to be a whole bunch of the 2 seeds are probably going to have 5 or 6 losses. And that's not something I don't think it normally takes place. There's a lot of parity in all the different conferences, and the Big Ten is probably right up there with all of them in that teams that finish 4th or 9th, probably 1, maybe 2 game separation between those teams. And so that's just I guess that's a little bit different than the way it used to be, because it seemed like the cream was always towards the top. But now it seems a lot more level. And it's just tough because are you okay with losing 8 to 10 times? I mean, that just seems crazy to me.
In a row.
Not in a row. That's not even
it's possibly about to be in a row.
We used to say that, like in our locker room area, a loss was like a death in the family. And 7 games in a row, that would be difficult to swallow in a Coach Knight era team. I don't even know how that process would take place. I don't know who would be left from a coaching/playing perspective. I don't know why I'm comparing it to that, but I have no point of reference as to how you could lose 7 in a row.
Archie has been trying to recruit the state of Indiana. Did a good job last year. He landed Romeo Langford, landed Rob Fennessy, of course, Demezi Anderson out of South Bend. First South Bend recruit they've had since John Laskowski, I think, in like 40 years. And which hasn't done them a lot of good, but they broke the seal there. But does this hurt recruiting in the state of Indiana when you've got Purdue doing well, Notre Dame's not doing well, and Butler's not doing well, but Indiana is in tanking?
I don't think so, because I was the same way, but every player feels like he's going to be the difference. And, yes, you want to go to a winning program. Everybody does, and that's why players picked Indiana for years and years and years. Coach Knight produced winning teams and winning seasons. But you also kind of want to be the solution. And I don't think these guys are looking at it. It's almost kind of maybe works the other way, because they'll look at it and say they've lost 7 in a row and they're still going to put 15,000 people in the stands for the next home game. And there's not very many programs that could say that. And so I honestly, it would be great to go to the Final Four, and that cannot hurt recruiting by any means. But players love to be the solution, and they love to be the guy and get the attention. And so, right now, what's going to happen? What are Indiana fans going to start doing right now? They're going to start talking more about Trace Jackson, and they're going to start talking more about hopefully Keon Brooks and some of those guys. They're just going to start talking more about the recruits, and guys love to be talked about when they're still in high school.
In this day and age, Mike Krzyzewski, Dean Smith, all those guys, John Beeline, they all started out horrible. Their first 3 years, they actually were worse than what Archie's going through right now. But they were able to go through that storm. It's a different era, different age. You've got social media. You've got people just pounding. Some don't know what they're talking about. Some do have a good.
Would all these coaches have survived their first 5 years if they had social media the way it is today?
How much difficult is it going to get for Archie as these losses keep piling? Not that he's in any danger of his job, nor should he be. Make sure that's said. He should not be. He's a year and a half on the job. He's got one recruiting class, and you can say what you will about what's going on here. You got to give him the time and his own players, without a doubt. But how difficult is it at Indiana, with Hoosier Nation the way they are, and as they already are up in arms, as these losses continue to pile up, how difficult is it going to be for Archie to keep the faithful in tow?
Yeah, okay, so here's what I worry about with Archie, is that he is such a basketball guy. Like, I want him to understand, look, I still believe in you. We still think what you do is the right thing to do, and I don't want his confidence to get – not that it would, not that me saying anything to him would matter at all, but I don't look at this as a Archie Miller problem as to what's going on. But I worry about Archie because I know he is a basketball guy, and yes, he loves his family and his wife and kids and brothers and parents. But after all of those things, then it's basketball. And he is a basketball guy. And this, when you're a basketball guy and it's your life and it's what you do for a living, when you go home tonight, you don't sleep. And when you lay in bed and you think about plays that happened and things that you could have done different, or how you could have prepared different, or why didn't we do this, or why didn't this guy do that, that will go through his head all night tonight, all day tomorrow. And then you got to start preparing for Michigan State. And you're still got a knot in your gut over what happened last night. You're going to get home late tonight. You got to travel again tomorrow or the next day. And it's just, I worry about Archie because he's such a basketball guy. It's his life. It's family and then basketball for Archie. And so I don't want Archie to be in a situation that he starts to question himself, because the system can work. I do believe that after a 4-year period, he'll be more accountable. In my mind, at least, he'll be more accountable for what's product that's put out on the floor. And I want to see this is. I've been saying this for a year now, and I love the 5-star recruits too. Believe me, I know every team has to have their Calvert Chaneys of that world. Okay, but where's their Archie Miller? Like, Archie Miller was a good player and a glue guy, and he made his team better. And you go watch those North Carolina State teams, he was a huge part of that team. And where's his Archie Miller? Who's his glue guy out there on the court? And I want him to recruit that. Like, I don't want him to think, and trust me, I don't have like a hotline with Archie Miller when I go home that we're talking on the phone. I don't have a whole lot of inside information at all. I tell you, I worry about him. I'm an IU nut. I always have been. And so I worry about it too. I can only imagine how he worries about it. And I don't want him to start to question himself, because I sure don't question that. This is not a, you said it a minute ago, I wanted to say this about a guy like John Beilein, okay? When he got hired at Michigan, in my mind, I kind of considered that a transition hire. Like, that was a hire that was going to go from where they were to, they'll have John Beilein for a couple years, and then they'll hire a big-name guy. Boy, has he turned everything around. And he's not done it with a bunch of guys that we all knew their name and Twittered them all day long. I don't know if I use that in the proper term, but you know what I mean. Like, where we all knew who they were. And they're you watch them, they're kind of a fun team to watch, and they look like they're having fun. And for me to say that about a Michigan team, that's tough. That's tough for me to spit out.
Knowing what we know about this team, what they have, the pieces they have, the pieces coming back next year, and not that I'm already talking about next year, but I'm already talking about next year. How far away are they from putting a team on the floor? How many pieces are they going to have? Because they obviously don't have what they need right now to be competitive, to be a team in the top third of the Big Ten, because they're not close right now.
Yeah, I mean, you want to hope that you can get a guy like Jerron Davis that ends up being like, is it Nick Ward, the Ward guy from Michigan State, who he's been there for, what is he, junior, senior, whatever he is, but wasn't overly touted coming in, and you feel like they got about as much out of his abilities as you're going to get. Indiana's going to need one or two of those guys that are already there. When Jawan's gone, where does it come from? I mean, it's going to come from something that's not currently there. So somebody's going to have to step up. Last year I think a lot of people were excited about Jawan's senior year, including myself. I wish he had more help, and when I say help, I wish there was somebody that other teams would focus on to give him a little bit more freedom. But I mean, you're not going to have that this year. I mean, you're going to talk about points in the paint. You're going to lose Romeo and Jawan. I mean, we don't have the stat, but let's go through and calculate what points in the paint will be for Indiana coming back next year.
I'd say it's pretty safe to assume there's going to be some other people that are not back for this team next year. I'm not saying that because I know something, I've heard something, but there's no way, the way this team is, we've talked about the lack of chemistry, the lack of positive touches. I just can't imagine this team coming back in its entirety. There's going to be some personnel changes. I think there has to be almost.
Yeah, but I mean, so you look at, and this is not a negative comment. Like, I'm honestly just saying, you take Jawan and you take Romeo out of the equation, Finney would be a huge loss. Finney's a guy you can build off of because he's solid.
Talk about him.
Yeah, he's solid. He's going to get you – you're going to know what you're going to get out of him, and it's going to be a lot of positiveness. Al Durham hopefully could have that developmental year where he just all of a sudden you're like, wow, that guy had a great summer and had a lot of improvement. You're going to need several of those guys. If this is going to get turned around in a year, you're going to need several of those guys to be able to step up and do that. And that's I don't want to say scary, but you're almost banking on winning the lottery at that point.
Well, Zach said that asked if we can get a participation trophy for competing in the Big Ten this year. That's about the only thing they're going to get. But
yeah,
they've got to.
I don't know. Don't you have to compete?
Well, that's true. That's a good point. Now
I'm
they're
gonna get in
fighting
trouble for that one. I'm gonna get in trouble
postseason.
for that one, aren't I? I'm gonna pay for that one.
No, because they haven't competed. That's been the whole point. They have not
But so
competed.
like I hate being this way because I'm not questioning the fact that they want to win. I'm not questioning the fact that they practice hard and that they play hard. I think it is. When I say are they competing, I mean I feel like there's some other things that could be done. And I'm going to play Coach Knight here for a minute, and I'm going to blame it on AAU basketball because AAU basketball has desensitized players from losses. And you play so many games, you expect to lose games in tournaments all year long, and it just desensitizes you. And I'm blaming AAU for that kind of thing and the way players react and act and everything they do now. And so it's going to be.
Does this team know how to compete? I mean, I know that sounds dumb on the face of it, but I don't think it is really.
You've got to rely.
I don't know that they know how to compete.
You've got to rely a lot on guys' pedigree coming up. What were they taught in high school? Because we're relying a lot on young players. So what were they taught in high school? I mean, I think Romeo is coming from a high school program where they were held accountable. Yeah, I mean, their coaching staff cared and did a good job. And
Shannon's a great coach.
Yeah,
great high school coach.
And so, I don't know a lot about some of the other guys' programs, but I know I don't see. It's not that I don't see them giving the effort. I don't see them doing some of the little things that I do see some other teams doing. It's an easy way of putting it. That's a softer, gentler Todd saying they're doing some stupid stuff.
And how can they continue the season then? That's how because they play like this. This is not a 1, 2, 3, or even 4 game. This is a distinct pattern that has set in, and it is nothing showing that there is any change on the horizon whatsoever.
Yeah, I said it the other night. One of the hardest things to do is to overcome the mental hurdles. And when your confidence is broken, that literally is the hardest thing. You can become a better shooter. You can practice free throws. You can get faster moving on defense. You can study rotations better. I mean, there's things you can do to physically make yourself more capable. Mentally, that is the hardest thing that we ever had to deal with. And when everything is going bad, man, you even as a player sit there and begin to wonder. And I'm talking about we might have a 2-game losing streak. Not very many of them, but I think we had some. I know in that 8-10 season year we did have.
I've heard of that 8-10 season.
Yeah, I can quote that thing for you. Go me to. We better go off air before that happens.
But it's on air all the time,
yeah,
I'm sure.
But I mean, overcoming the mental part and questioning yourself would be the hardest part. And these guys are at a depth that I'm not familiar with, and I don't honestly. I mean, what advice do you give them? I don't even know what you say to them.
I have no idea. Eric wants to know, did Rutgers' size have an impact on this game? I think it's an obvious answer to that. They were known as a good recruiting or a rebounding team coming into this game, and they just killed Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll say it again. I mean, Jawan is not a 5-man, and I'm not saying that he's playing a 5-man because I don't think Indiana's using a 5-man. But, I mean, he's playing the role where he's supposed to be the guy who guards the biggest guy and blocks him out and gets the most rebounds. And then on the offensive end, oh, by the way, we need you to score the ball on the inside too.
Got to do it all.
And that is that's a tall task to ask of anyone. How tall is he? 6'8"?
6'8".
Yeah. I mean, and we're talking he's 6'8", not like almost 6'9" or 10. Like he's right there at 6'8", guarding guys that are big, heavy, probably taller than him, and he is athletic, but that's who we're talking about as our expected to be leading rebounder. That's tough. I think Romeo does a great job of rebounding for his position as a 2 guard. He does an outstanding job of rebounding with his athletic ability. It's awesome. That I would say Indiana is more athletic than their opponent 95% of the time with Romeo at that 2 guard. Outside of that, who else is Indiana out-athleticing or outsizing at any position? And there isn't any. So, yeah, size is always going to hurt Indiana.
Archie's known for his teams, though, being he likes the guys around that 6'8" size, and he's got a ton of them on this team. A lot of people have asked tonight, thinking that Indiana needs a big man. Well, they had one in Deron Davis, but that's not somebody that Archie recruited. Archie's more like he likes the 6'8" guys, and I don't know if that's going to work in the Big Ten.
Yeah. Well, when you look at it, I mean, I guess you would say you're going to throw Justin Smith in that category. So Justin Smith and Juwan are in that 6'8" area. And then after that, you go down to, 6'5", 6'3", and 6'1". And that's in these days, that's a decent-sized high school team. It's not even a huge high school team, but that's a decent-sized high school team. They're not a team that's going to out-physical anybody. But I don't think that's what they're trying to do either. So I'm okay with that. I think they have the capability to play much better than they have. I don't know with this makeup that they have the ability to beat a team like Duke that has a bunch of guys that are not only 6'8", but extremely skilled on the offensive end of the floor.
And then as they continue, they look forward to trying to break this streak. After it continues to build, and we talked about them not having confidence, they're not playing with confidence, and now the losses keep piling up. It's only getting harder and harder for these guys.
It is, and you know, it'd be nice right now if we could just fast forward through it and call it an 8-game losing streak and just get past the Michigan State game and build on the next one. Who do they have after Michigan State? Do we know?
I'll have to look that up. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have, before I asked the question, I should have known. But let's just move past the Michigan State game and say from that point forward, you know, Indiana has to go on a run, and they've got to be able to do some things that surprise us in a positive way. So that Indiana's got Iowa and Ohio State at home after that Michigan State game. You know, that's 2 games. Iowa's playing pretty well. They're tough. They're mentally tough. Ohio State started the season out, got all the way up to like number 12 or 13 ranking.
Where's the easy one?
So but when you look at that, those are games that you have to win. Like I don't care if it's
Rutgers?
6-7 game winning streaks or whatever, losing streaks, whatever it is. Those are games you have to win. And then, you know, you've got to beat Purdue at home. You've got to beat Iowa both times. You have to beat Wisconsin at home. You know, that Michigan State game from here on out, that's the late one, the March 2nd Michigan State game, is the only other one right now I can say, if you lost that one, it's not going to hurt you. Every one of those other games you have to win. Even the at Minnesota game will be tough. At Iowa will be really tough. But you've got to go steal a couple of those. The losses like this, not beating Rutgers and losing to Nebraska at home, means you got to go steal 2 games on the road, and that's where it's going to have to be. You should beat Wisconsin at home. You should beat Purdue at home.
But you should beat Rutgers on the road. You should beat Nebraska.
Hey, shut up. I'm trying to make a point here. We already lost that game. We've moved past that. Come on now. Focus on the future.
Well,
if you ask me how to turn this around again.
Oh, well, yeah,
I'm kidding.
Oh.
I don't know. I am as frustrated. Believe me, I'm an IU nerd. I don't try to act like I'm not a homer. I root for IU to win and Kentucky to lose every night. And so I am frustrated like everyone else is, but I'm not frustrated with the coaches. That's the one thing that I can tell you right now. If fans say that to me, immediately I shut them down on that one, because that's not the deal.
So many fans are.
That's not the
tell
deal.
them why that they've got to just back off and let him do his thing.
Well, we said it a little bit earlier, but if everyone would have judged Krzyzewski in his first 3 years, he would have never had a 4th year. And you say that about Boeheim, and you can say about all these guys, their first couple years were not that great. And it's unfortunate because social media is one thing, which lucky for us that that's the way it is, but when you're at that coaching perspective, it's a negative. And these guys have got to have time. When you get the guys who are like, who's a good example of someone that's gone and won there, and they're guy from Ohio State that came from Butler. When you look at a guy like that, Holtman. I mean, a guy like that goes there and wins right away. And that program, that program is ahead of where.
Lost 5 of 6 right now.
But that team is ahead. Who expected them to be any good at all? Who expected them to be ranked 12th in the country at some point in time? I'm not. That's probably a poor example. But coaches that go somewhere and win immediately, every time that happens, it's tenfold negative for the Indiana coach, because
Indiana fans
Smack.
expect the best.
Smack, Louisville.
Yes, perfect example.
That's a great example of, especially with all the negativity they had going on in their entire athletic program.
And they came from almost the same exact type place, Xavier and Dayton.
Yeah, right. And you look at those situations, timing-wise, you look at how all of that transpired. I mean, hey, Archie's supposed to be the Indiana coach because the way all that timing transpired, if Indiana hadn't hired him then, 2 or 3 weeks or a month later, he was going to be the Ohio State coach because, Mata left late in that whole process, and I'm pretty sure Ohio State would have gone after him if he just not already committed to Indiana. So,
absolutely.
I don't look at it that way. I don't look at changing the staple. That's what it is. I would love for them to recruit a couple different players. I love the fact of getting the big-time recruits. You have to have the Calbert Cheneys. You have to have the Trace Jacksons. But you've also got to have guys that can play with them. And I'm not sure that throwing a bunch of more 5-stars next to them is the way that gets the most out of them.
Absolutely. We've been on for like an hour and a half.
Oh,
is that right?
Sorry. I talk a lot.
No, I had no idea. I was like, have we even hit an hour yet?
You say like 2 words, and then all of a sudden I start talking for half an hour.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
they don't want to hear me talk, brother. They want to hear you. Thanks a lot for everybody joining us tonight here at After the Game with Todd Leary. We appreciate it. We will be back here on Saturday. If you live in southern Indiana, you can come join us at Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. We will be back doing the post-game show here with Todd on Saturday
Get
night.
the garlic knots and the pizza because, man, it's good.
It's all good. But thanks a lot. Keep your questions coming for the Saturday. Make sure you join us on Indiana Sports Beat. Tomorrow we'll be on the air, of course, live at 6. And you can catch the replay anytime on Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Facebook, of course. Todd is on with us on Friday, and we'll be talking about this again as
Probably
we
repeat everything I just said on Friday morning.
Well, at least we got another game to talk about as head up to they'll head to East Lansing on Friday. But again, thank you everybody for joining us. For Todd Leary, I'm Jim Coyle. You guys have a great night. Oh, and before I forget, thanks to Jake Drescher for keeping us on the air and making everything roll. Thanks, Jake.
Big time.